What's good, everybody? It is Andy with Nerds on the Run, and we are back for a news update. It's been a little while, but we're here on the channel to bring you a fresh piece of news from Nintendo. A Indie World Showcase dropped today, and it's timely that I get this one out because, as a matter of fact, there were quite a lot of shadow drops in this one. For those of you that don't know, shadow drops usually mean it's releasing either that same day or that very moment that it's revealed. So I'm going to get into the games that I was the most excited about, the indies that are coming to Nintendo that have me the most stoked, and then we can talk a little bit about all the shadow drops, some of which coincide. But for sure, the first thing we'll start off with is Supergiant Games is bringing out Hades to the Nintendo Switch. It's been on PC for a long time. It's actually even on other consoles, I think, by now. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there. But if you don't know, Supergiant Games made Bastion way back in the day. They made Transistor, very stylish games, the other two are kind of Diablo-esque. I should say Bastion kind of is. Transistor sort of has a little bit of real-time strategy element to it, or a turn-based kind of, a time-freezing element to it. Hades has nothing of the kind. Hades is a straight-up, has a more of a roguelite type action to it. And it's all kind of baked into the narrative based off of Greek mythology. You're the son of Hades. You're going through the underworld. Very very kind of comic book stylization mashed up with Greek mythology. It is a marvel for sure. So I'm very excited about that. It is one of the only things that actually did not get a release date from the Indie World Showcase from Nintendo today. We're looking at fall of 2020, so pretty soon, but we'll see. I'm sure they've got to optimize some things on it still. With those roguelites, especially how action-packed they can get, the frame rate's got to at least lock at 30, so let's hope that's the case. In the sizzle reel, we didn't get much of it, but the one thing that I'm actually super pumped for, and it may as well have been a shadow drop, so this is kind of our transition game into the shadow drop section, which is the rest of them. That is right. Almost everything they announced today, certainly that caught my attention, was released today. But in a few days from now, August 21st, a game called Inmost, all one word, INMOST, looks kind of like a sepia pixel side-scrolling action game. I hate to people throw around the whole Metroidvania thing, Castlevania Metroid thing. It looks like a more pure kind of straight-up action game, and maybe it has some of those backtracking and power-up seeking elements to it, but it really looks more, it has a little bit of a Limbo flair, but definitely more combat-oriented than Limbo was. And again, not silhouette based in any way. It is very much a sepia, but still pixely. Just really interesting. Just looks different than anything I've ever seen, honestly. Has a creepy vibe to it, but I if you even get 5-6 hours out of it, it looks like a nice bite-sized game that could be really cool. Back in the last Indie World update, I believe I mentioned the game Spiritfarer. We at least know a little bit more about it now. It kind of is one part platformer, explorer, adventure, and one part they call it kind of like a management game. You basically can kind of customize. It's all side scroller. You can customize a ship that kind of you're basically a farrier across a river to the underworld, the river Styx style, but it's not founded in that mythology. It's more of a Ghibli-esque, humans and animals mashed up in a sentient world together. Kind of looks really cool. And that one got the shadow drop. That one was announced way back when, and they didn't really put an exact date on it. But now, the side-scrolling adventure / management game, whatever that means, a sim-light type element to it is coming out, and it just has a super crisp art style. I don't want to oversell it and say it's trying to emulate Ghibli style exactly, but it certainly has a flair for that kind of thing. So, we'll see. Those are definitely my topmost three anticipated. There was another one. Again, all these are going to be shadow drops here. Takeshi and Hiroshi. It has a really cool mashup of styles where it's a pixelated side-scrolling RPG, but it's like an RPG builder with sort of a framed narrative. The framed narrative is two brothers, the older one that's a game designer, and it's a very claymation style, cutscene oriented type thing. And then as you play as the game designing brother, and you build challenges for yourself within the game world, and the game world's a much more pixelated kind of a Super Nintendo, you know, has the Super Nintendo kind of graphics, but with the extra polish of modern technology, which is a pretty popular art style these days. So I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm unfortunately not going to have time to get all these games at once, so poor me. Oh, and I guess, you know, while we're touching the halfway point here, I should mention I haven't checked out the details of it itself, but some of the games they even announced today, as well as some other indies that are popular on the platform, apparently have a slight sale. Now, you know, a sale in Nintendo, I know it's a meme by this point, but a sale in Nintendo terms could be, you know, I don't know, 99 cents off instead of, you know, $59.99. It's $58 or $58.99 or whatever. Whatever. A sale is a sale. Beggars can't be choosers, right? So I'm sure I'll get at least one of these titles sometime in the next couple of days here, since I'm going to have a little bit of time off coming up. And most of them look pretty short and digestible. So Takeshi and Hiroshi, super cool RPG builder with the frame narrative, claymation, pixel, kind of a really cool thing going on there. So look forward to that. And if you do want to see any other Nintendo coverage, or you do want to see any game coverage, if you want to see me and the other nerds on the run goofing around in games, feel free to subscribe to stick around, or like the video and let me know with a comment what you're thinking about our content here. So the last big game that was announced was Raji, an ancient epic, and I'm really pleased to see a game like this. A little bit of like a Diablo vibe, not quite as isometric. There's definitely like side-scrolling elements and really interesting things happening with the camera, but just from like the combat and kind of weapon progression look to it. But the really and most notable and important difference is the narrative that it's based out of is from Hindu and Balinese myths. So it's not Arthurian, it's not, you know, a lot of the well-worn paths. I'm really refreshed to see a game like this. This was actually probably the coolest game that I saw today, just in terms of, it's maybe not exactly my style of game, but just in terms of the fact that a game is coming out from a new studio. This is their first game, and it's an Indian-based studio, and they are, you know, putting out content that's tried and true to their own mythos. You know, it still has kind of the medieval time period in terms of, you know, architecture and things like that, but it's all, you know, based on their own ancient culture. So that's really cool. Also a shadow drop. So that one I believe is a timed exclusive, I think they said. So it will be on other platforms at some point. And actually I believe that's true of Spiritfarer as well, but I could be wrong about that. In the sizzle, there's an Unrailed game, a game called Unrailed. It's cashing in on the Minecraft thing. I'm only mentioning it because it's part of the Shadow Drop. I said I'd cover all those, and it's just a demo, so it's not the whole game, but very small perspective, kind of a macro, little bit of micro, mostly macro kind of building type stuff. Not quite to the SimCity level, but it had a flavor of that, kind of Minecrafty, and it was in the sizzle, so I couldn't tell you too much about it, but it's out today if you want to mess around with it and let me know what it's about. Manifold Garden is a first-person puzzle game. Physics-defying artwork is kind of how they described it. It has a really cool, if anybody played the Unfinished Swan or some of those puzzle games that came out around that time, it has a little bit of that vibe to it, but it has that very kind of MC Escher-esque impossibility to the perspective, mind-bending sort of stuff that goes in there. I know it's a mobile game, so don't stone me or anything, but Monument Valley was a fairly popular perspective bending game for a while in the mobile space. So if anyone's played that, it looks like a first person version of that, kind of, is probably the best way I could explain it. It seems pretty cool. Evergate, it's again a little bit of a meme to say that this by now, the Ori and the Blind Forest, it's all kind of in that, you know, Castlevania, Metroidvania realm a little bit. Evergate is some kind of knockoff of Ori, but from what I could tell from some of the coverage I was checking out, it really has a very similar art style, and I don't want to undersell it. Very pretty looking game, very crisp looking game. has like a slightly different bend to it, I guess. This whole spirit realm thing kind of it reminded me a little bit of sort of the Donkey Kong Country reboots, that there's sort of it's still a side scroller, but there's sort of a foreground and a background shift that can happen with sort of different things happening in the relative spaces that you can play in. Who knows? I'm not saying it's not for me. I personally, with the kind of Microsoft and Nintendo love that's going on, will likely want to see actually play Ori and the Blind Forest and the sequel as well when that eventually makes its way over there. So, great indie showcase. When you don't have any super banger announcements, the way to keep the energy up is to have really different looking stuff, very diverse, both in terms of people who are making the games, which is cool for representation, and just in terms of the different styles of games spanning different genres. Looks super cool, and keeping the shadow drops coming makes the pace feel pretty intense. So I think they did the right thing by getting this collection of games out today and sort of lumping them together that way, because in that way, the sum of their parts is greater than the whole, or actually I should say, strike that, reverse it. The sum is greater than the parts alone. They were able to maybe make a little bit more impact with some of these games than they might have if they announced them 6 months earlier or whatever. So, it's exciting things to see. I hope if anybody saw any games that I did not cover, I certainly skipped a fair few that did not catch my eye. But if there was something that you really thought you wanted to give a shout out to, please let us know. And like I said, follow us if you want to see some more, and we'll be around for some stuff. All right. This has been Andy with Nerds on the Run, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.